Hello and welcome back, everyone. So, this is the design that we're trying to achieve. And last time I left off, I did one icon, and then I added the rest offline, just because once you see one, you see the rest. The other thing I noticed was that these icons they're different sizes, so they take up different space, right? And so you see this category and then this ellipsis here. Those that are closer to the top, well, I noticed that um, they were being, everything is kind of being shifted down, and there was some, like the social one especially was really shifted down, offset from the rest, wasn't aligned, so it didn't look nice. But I did a lot of work offline, so I'm just gonna kind of walk you through what I did. So each of those grid items, they have a class that's associated with the category. So keep that in mind. And the icon, I gave them a class of icon. And then I also, in grid item row 2, remember there was a span inside of here. So it would say last week or last month, whatever it was. I took that out just to make things simpler. And I changed these IDs to title dash 0, current dash 0, title dash 1, current dash 1, and so on and so forth, all the way to 5. So title dash 5, current dash 5. So all of this data was hard coded, and now it's no longer the case. So I will scroll down to these guys. So these have a class based on the category. So I had to declare position relative because, like I mentioned, there was some offset. So here, let me just comment this out and save it and pull up the web page. So everything's shifted down, right? And if I scroll, look at social, it's really shifted. It's not even aligned with exercise and self-care. But the rest are pretty much fine. Just because the height of this icon is much larger than the other ones by like 20 something pixels. Even maybe even close to 40 for some. Um, so yeah, that was an issue. And then yeah, like I said, these guys up here, the category and the ellipsis is really shifted from the top. Um, so the way to do that is to declare the icon class absolute. So I declared it absolute. So it basically takes it out of the flow. It's kind of like it doesn't really exist. So as far as cause like div, certain elements like block elements and stuff, they take up the whole row, and there's spacing associated with it in the height direction as well. So everything sort of stacks onto each other in rows. It's sort of like what the SVG was kind of doing. It has a certain width and height to it, so it's taking up a lot of space. But if you declare it absolute, it kind of takes it out of that flow, and it's kind of like it's not really there, so it shouldn't really push or shift anything down. It's kind of like it's there, but it's as far as the space wise, it's really just taking up what it really needs. So um, that's the whole thing behind that. So yeah, so the last thing that we need to do, like I said, you saw that the data's there, but we hard coded it. So I created a file here, filter.js. So daily, weekly, monthly. What is that? So if I go back to the picture, That's these guys right here, these paragraph elements, daily, weekly, monthly. So you can access that. I gave them IDs. So you can do document.getElementById, and you put the name of the ID. So it's pretty straightforward, daily, weekly, monthly. So now instead of writing all these out, I could just call daily, weekly, or monthly, right? So like down here. So the window, I added an event lister load. So basically, once the page loads, upon loading, it's going to fetch the data.json file, which is this guy right here. And this is an array of objects. So one object, so separated by commas, so it goes from here to here. So it has a title, key, and this is the value work for this one. So this is the first object. And then time frames key has an object value, which is composed of 3 other objects: daily, weekly, current, daily, weekly, monthly. So if I were to access using dot notation this object, I would say, the object dot title, object dot will give me work, right? Object dot time frames dot daily will give me this, and if I say dot current, it'll give me 5. Or if I say the object dot time frames dot daily dot previous, I'll get 7. So that's how you would access the data in those fields. So using the fetch, it returns a promise. So here there's a response. I just called this this parameter response, and so I'm just returning the response that I get from this fetching the data from this file, and I'm parsing it as a JSON object, which I'll later then be able to use here. So then I tag a dot then at the end of this, at the end of fetch, right? And now I have access to the data. So the data is that whole array of objects. So in order to iterate through the array, you can use a for each loop. So then that has 2 parameters here, value and index. So an array starts with an index of 0 and goes sequentially all the way to whatever the last item is, which if you remember when I was going through the index.html, it was all the way up to 5, because there's 6 categories, so 0 through 5. So here I just like to store, I said store JSON data and variables. So here, so the data is the array, and then the value is each of these. So it's gonna start with this, and I'm gonna access this data first, and then after that it'll that'll be one iteration. Then it'll move on to index 1, which is the second object, and I'm gonna access those guys. So that's kind of just looping through. So it's value, so the current hours is timeframes.daily.current. So I'm just loading the daily information here when you load the page, and then I'm getting daily.previous for the previous hours, and then the title is just going to be value.title, and then that data is going to be inserted into the element. So I just called title element, and I got the ID of title dash whatever the index is. So title dash 0 would be under the work, that work section. Current hours element would be that paragraph in the grid row 2 section, with the current index of this one would be 0, and so these would just change dynamically. So this is a template literal, so these are like backticks, and what this does basically is allow you, so title dash, I can't just put like 0, 1, 2, like that just would get really long and messy. So if you put a $ and curly braces, then it takes whatever this value is. So like for the first one to be 0, it'll translate that number into like part of the string, so it'd be title-0. And then here, now I'm setting those elements to the data that's been extracted. So the title element would be like work, play, social, and etc. So I do inner text, and I set that to title, which was the value of value.title. And then the current hours element dot inner text, so that's the paragraph. I take whatever the value of current is, convert it to a string, and I add plus hours. So that is going to be, it's taking forever. So this would be the title, and then this would be the current value element here, and then this is going to be the span. So then, so there's no span right now, so I got to create a node, a span node, right? So it's like everything you see kind of on the screen in the window, they're called nodes, right? There's like basically like a tree model. So I'm gonna create a span node. So you call document.createElement, and I want to create a span. And then in order to insert something like text inside of that, I'm going to create a text node. So document.createText node. And then for daily, it's yesterday dash plus whatever the previous value is plus hours. And then to append that to the span, this text node, I'm going to do span node, that's the parent, dot append child text node. So now that text is appended to the span. So now all I have to do is append the span to the paragraph element. So current hours element was the paragraph, and again inside was the span, so I got to append it there. So that's on loading. So now I got to add event listeners to these three, right? So again, it's a click function. If I click on it, I'm going to change the weekly and monthly styles, the font color basically to white, and then this .style.color to like the blue. So here I could have used like sort of like an arrow function, but then this would refer to the actual body, and I don't want that. I actually want the paragraph element with the ID of daily here. So if you declare like this normal type of function, so you say function and establish it like this, then this would refer to the paragraph element, and you just can change its font color to blue. And again, fetch the data, get the response, parse it as a JSON object, and then that fetch returns a promise, and then you use a dot then to take that promise, and then so again here is the method that takes in a promise, and then that promise holds the data, which is the array of objects, and then I'm establishing all of this all over again. I'm accessing the different fields within the section that I want, and it's iterating through. It's again adding all of this, so weekly add event listener, monthly add event listener. So outside of this, everything from fetch, this whole fetch function on down is the same. So here I made everything simpler. So 123 lines of code. So what we can do is, Sorry. Get rid of that. And then call this function get JSON data and pass it a value of daily. So I'm going to show you what that means. So let me uncomment those out. So now I have daily, weekly, monthly, add event listener. So listening for click events. And again, all I'm doing is just changing the colors of the other ones. So like weekly, monthly to white, and then the daily one gets the blue. For weekly, it gets the blue, and then the daily and monthly elements get white font color. And then again for monthly, it's daily and weekly, they're changing to white, and then that one gets changed to blue. So they're all listening. So all of these guys are listening for the click event, right? So daily, weekly, monthly, that's them. But now they have this get JSON data, and I'm passing in daily, weekly, or monthly. And then here, add event listener, I'm just passing in daily. So what is that? So let me just, hopefully I didn't delete too much. I think everything should be fine. Let me just do that. So this function, so you say function and then the name of the function, which is get JSON data, and then it has a parameter of time frame. So that's like the monthly, weekly, or daily string. So you pass that into the function, and since this is all the same, we're gonna fetch the data, then it's gonna go and loop through everything. But here, the current so title's always gonna be value.title. That's fine. But the current and previous, that one is a little different because here you got time frames. So this time frames key has a value of an object of 3 different objects. So daily, weekly, monthly. So I gotta access that. So I can't do dot notation, right? But there's another way. So you can use this bracket notation. So value.timeframes, and so if I pass it in daily, then it's gonna access here, and then I can do dot current or dot previous. If I pass in weekly, the time frame value is gonna have weekly here, so then it's gonna move to the key of weekly, and then it's gonna access its current or previous. So everything's dynamic now. And then let text node, so I established that. So everything else, all of this is the same. So the span node, I'm creating that. But so here I do like if else statements. So yeah, if the time frame is daily, if I pass in daily as the value, then it's going to be yesterday dash, and then previous dot toString dot hours. If it's weekly, then it's going to say last week. Monthly is going to say last month. And then once it finds one of these that it matches, then it's going to set the text node to that value, append that to the span, and then the current hours element, which is the paragraph, is going to append the span node. Okay. So now I have like what 100 and something 23 or 63 lines of code. So now I'm gonna save this. Now I'm down to 69. I'm gonna come here, right? So if I just refresh it, just show you. So right now everything's working. It's daily, so it'll say yesterday. And then if I do monthly, these hours change. The monthly element now is blue, the rest are white, and it'll say last month and the hours. If I do weekly, now this changes to white, it'll say last week, and so on. And then the default state is daily now here. So upon loading, it doesn't change any of these colors, right? It's just gonna load the data. So So if I refresh it, you see that, but it's giving me the daily data. So that's what happens when you just call this function. It gets everything you need, and then the other add event listeners is doing the same thing, getting the appropriate data, but it's also adding the appropriate font colors. So now I go weekly, and then I got this. It's still showing. Got my user card. Everything looks good. And yeah, that's it. So if you don't know, just this is vanilla JavaScript, and yeah, if you don't know about it, you should. I mean, this is basically kind of like what, like if you were to learn React, it'd be different. And I've been working with it, and so I had to remember, how do I do this? But essentially, it's like this is kind of what it does. jQuery, I haven't really messed with that too much, but it's basically the same, but it can make things a little simpler. But I just feel with how if you structure everything right, you can get away with just without jQuery. I don't know. I've just never been like a huge fan of it, but it does. It has its still has, I think, some usefulness, but I don't think, especially with React, people don't really mess with that too much. But yeah, so this is how you do it in just vanilla JavaScript. You would, the document, get element by IDs, pretty much, and then you add event listeners. That's another keyword to learn. If you don't know about JSON objects and how to access the data inside there, I definitely recommend that you look that up, because we did both ways. We did the dot notation, and we did the bracket notation, because the bracket notation does come in handy. So you have access to both. But yeah, so the main point here really is, besides understanding these keywords, is that if you have something that you're doing over and over and over, like instead of writing out, it's not about writing a lot of lines of code. It's just about getting the job done, making everything simple, right? So that's what functions are for. They have a purpose. This purpose is to get the data, access the data, and put it where it needs to on the page. That's essentially what this function does. And if I have multiple event listeners listening for an event, and it's doing the same thing, then it just makes sense to just call that function and pass it in anything. And sometimes you don't need to pass it in anything, but in this case we did, because it just depended on whether we're filtering the data, basically. That's why I call it filter.js. We're filtering it as far as daily, weekly, or monthly. But yeah, that is it. Here's the desktop design, mobile design here, and yeah, it's taking forever to load. So got that. So yeah, I feel like everything looks good. Everything is on point to how Frontend Mentor laid it out. Everything works the way it should. Yeah, so that just concludes this challenge. I'm going to upload that to my GitHub, and I'll call it a day. Alrighty, guys, so I'm going to do some more of these front-end challenges, so look for those videos. And yeah, I'll try to do some content that's, more specific to certain topics, like whether it's Flexbox, or anything JavaScript, maybe with arrays, like the different methods on arrays, or whatever. So I'm gonna try to make more content like that. It'll help me learn. It'll help you guys learn, and we'll all become better developers. All right. Well, you guys have a great day, and till next time.